Welcome to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, and I love comic books to the tune of Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll.
I love comic books.
Give me a page and I'll read it, baby.
Nice. And I'm Nat, and I supposedly am a songwriter, but I think Yen
I'm taking the throne, man.
is
taking the throne.
is claiming all the territory of talent.
And I haven't even done the rap that's for you.
No. That's for my ears only.
There's out there in the ether, listeners know that there is a Comic Sans rap.
Maybe if we ever start like a Patreon.
Okay, sure.
That sounds
I think we should start a Patreon, and that's the only thing.
And you have to pay a minimum of like $2,000.
$2,000, and you get the sound file, and that's it.
Welcome to Comic Sans. Yen's wearing a pink shirt with ghosts on it. I can't not.
Well, I think we both gotta talk about as quickly as we can.
Sure.
Talk about what we're wearing.
Sure.
Because I'm wearing a pretty ugly shirt with ghosts and stuff on it.
And that was of your own volition.
That was my own volition. I chose to wear this. And Nat's wearing a Man
and I'm wearing
Man City.
Manchester
Nat's wearing a Man
United.
City.
It is blue. It is a vintage away Manchester United jersey.
Man City. Okay.
Shut up with the sharp logo in the front. I will admit.
And that's the name of a player? Is that the name of a player?
There was actually a player with the surname Sharp.
Oh, yeah?
Lee Sharp.
Liam Sharp?
Lee Sharp.
Of One Direction?
No. What? That's not his name.
What is his name?
Liam Gallagher?
No, that's Oasis. Oh, man.
But what I was going to say is that right now, at the time of recording, it is quite I would say a horrific shirt. Like you have horror themes going. It's just also kind of horror theme because United are having a pretty terrible season right now.
Okay.
So I would say this is also pretty
disgusting,
ghastly,
vile,
to be wearing this shirt. But that's
nauseating.
That's what loyalty is, right? Yen, you stick through the thing you love through thick or thin, just like the way you love comics.
Oh, I was wondering how you're going to transition.
Whether the comics are
honestly,
thick or thin.
Honestly, you should have stopped earlier because I had a perfect transition.
Oh, okay, let's rewind. Manchester United are having a bad season, so that's pretty ghastly.
Okay, and there's another word you used?
I don't remember what I said.
You said my shirt is what themed and your theme.
Your shirt is horror themed?
So that's the... Nat doesn't even know. He doesn't even know that we're reading...
Horror? I don't do well with horror, you know that, right?
Nat, we've covered a lot of genres in this show. Can you name some for me?
Romance.
Okay, romance with Lord Olympus.
Action.
Action with, say, Hellboy.
Yeah, a lot of things. Daredevil.
Yeah.
We've done sort of fantasy with Saga.
Fantasy with Saga, science fiction fantasy.
We
with
just
Saga.
did sort of like a slice of life.
With This One Summer.
Bildungsroman, if you will. I don't know.
I don't think you're using that term correctly.
An isekai.
An isekai, well done with Solo Leveling.
With trucks.
With Truck-kun.
What else? A lot of genres.
Adventure with Tintin.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Okay, superheroes.
Yeah.
Superheroes, obviously. Multiple superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
What's a genre we haven't done now?
I mean, you're setting me up.
One that's gonna make your skin crawl.
You're setting me up to say horror. And I'm going to repeat this. I do not do well with horror.
And you're not going to do well with the voice I'm going to do. No. I'm going to be the crypt keeper for the rest of the episode.
Oh, God. Can I quit? Is that an option now?
Once you enter Comic Sans, you cannot leave.
Roll a knowledge roll. 6+ to escape Comic Sans.
I thought you were being Scooby-Doo. Rolling. I genuinely thought that's what you were doing. Which honestly made more sense than D&D. Why did you go to D&D?
It just made me... I've been playing a lot of Betrayal at House on the Hill recently.
Okay.
With my cousin who's staying with us.
Yeah. That's a fun
So that's kind of in the realm I'm in.
Well, so we've already gotten there, Nat. It's horror. We're reading horror today. Now, what's your relationship with horror?
Well, throwback to last episode.
Yeah.
My first ever encounter with horror was Freddy vs. Jason.
Oh, true. You did say that.
Yes,
Okay.
when I was about 9 or 10.
Okay.
Had a sleepover with a bunch of friends.
Yeah,
all guys.
Yeah.
We thought it would be really cool if we took one of my friend's older brother's DVD. Now that I recall that's how it was.
Yeah.
We put it on. It's my first ever horror film. I think I watched about 30% of it. Most of the time, my eyes were closed.
Dang.
I did see full frontal nudity for the first time.
Yeah, and your eyes were closed.
And though that my eyes were fully open then.
I don't like the eye contact you made with me when you said that. Okay, but what else? What other any
Yeah, so
other
that's
horror?
my first encounter.
Yeah.
Honestly, after that, I've pretty much avoided the genre. I'm not a horror person. You know this because in college, you guys would go and watch like Get Out and what was the other one that came?
Us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was invited and I said no.
Yeah, that is true. You did say no. Did we not? We didn't convince you to come to us with us? I
I
thought we
didn't
did.
go.
I thought we
didn't
did.
go.
But we did try. We really
tried.
tried on us to get you to go with us to us for us.
And I said,
You said nope. Get out. I will not go to us with you.
thank you. It's just something I don't derive enjoyment from. So I just rather not consume it. But I've never read horror text.
So would you say Freddy vs. Jason is the scariest thing you've ever watched?
No.
Okay.
There was one class in high school, in secondary school.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we did have to watch a horror movie.
Okay. What was it?
I cannot remember. It's the one.
Describe it.
It's the one where there's a Thai version and an American version, and we watched both.
Okay.
It was like a film class.
You didn't watch The Ring, did you? I mean, The Ring wouldn't be. No, The Ring isn't Thai. So
it
it's not.
involves like a ghost sitting on someone's shoulders.
Oh, you watched Shudder?
Yes.
Dude, Shudder's so scary.
Yes.
I haven't watched Shudder.
So we watched the American one in class, which I heard
Yeah.
is less scary.
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
The assignment was to watch the Thai one at home.
And you didn't do it.
I did with the sound off.
Okay.
And here's a pro tip for anyone who doesn't enjoy horror.
Yeah.
If you turn off the music and the sound, the film becomes exponentially less scary.
You know, that's, and you know, I feel like that's a testament to audio engineering.
Which makes me less scared about today because there's clearly going to be no sound
Well,
unless
actually,
you're going to do some live.
I'm gonna be reading behind you. Woo! What's on the next page?
Yeah, that's classically the kind of sounds you'd hear in a horror film.
Actually, it's kind of interesting that you bring up that a horror film is less scary with the sound off. Because Comic Sans is also less scary with the sound off.
Yeah, right now, just try it out.
Try it out. Give it a bit. Just give it a bit.
Mute the sound.
I can't believe you just told me that, Nat. I can't believe you said that on air. That's crazy.
I can literally see the goosebumps.
I can't
in
believe
yours.
you. That's really
It was-
that's really uneasy. What
It was
you
pretty
said.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's actually illegal what you did, but we don't. Well, let's not get it. Okay, so the scariest movie. So you've been one step ahead of me this entire episode
Wow.
because I think the scariest movie I've seen, and I'm not great with horror either.
Okay.
Growing up, I was really bad with horror. We saw the trailer for M. Night Shyamalan's The Village before the Tigger movie, I believe.
The Tigger movie.
Yeah. And I
that doesn't seem like
I don't know why it was that trailer. Maybe I'm mixing memories together, but I could not sleep after watching the trailer for
Yeah.
The Village. And so growing up, I really couldn't do it. And there was one point, and it was kind of set off, I would say, by films like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Robert Eggers' The Vavitch, and Jordan Peele's Get Out. That did make me see, there's actually a lot of cinematic value to this that I'm missing out on if I try and avoid this genre entirely.
Right.
And a lot of it isn't as scary as I think it is.
Right.
I can't do stuff like Insidious, Paranormal Activity, The Conjuring, all that. I could not watch Shudder for sure. So when I think of the scariest movie I've seen, this is a little bit of a contentious take. I don't think many people are going to agree with me on this, but I think it would actually be, get this, Nat, Jordan Peele's Us.
It's the scariest thing you've watched?
Well, it's just crazy to me that you already said this, but I would say it wasn't the scary. And what I think of real fear with a horror movie is not the fear of the experience itself.
Right.
It's the lingering disquiet that sits with you after it. And I remember distinctly after watching Us, I just couldn't sleep because of the questions the movie was asking.
Right.
And it just had me really unsettled. Right. And I think that's what excites me the most about horror. So you've said you haven't read horror before.
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. I'm just going to go through some of the other media I have engaged with horror. So I've read a little bit of horror, primarily through the works of Stephen Graham Jones, who is this Native American writer who writes this crazy stories. Really love his work. Big recommend The Only Good Indians audiobook or the book itself. But if you get scared for the audiobook, just turn the sound off.
Yeah. Again, great advice from Comic Sans.
For audio, I like The Left-Right Game. That's one that I've listened to. And there's also another one called The Goblet Wire.
I have listened to Goblet Wire as well.
And that's a little bit, is that really horror? So,
More surrealist.
Surrealist, but there is a disquiet.
Yeah.
There is a sense of disquiet. And there's another one that I've been meaning to get to. Shout out to a podcast on our network, Undertow, on Realm, which I've been meaning to get to for a long time. Haven't gotten to it quite yet. So those are some of the different ways we can engage with horror. And from your understanding, Nat, what do you think of some of the tropes of horror? And let's think, we're frequently comparing comic books to film in the podcast. So what would you say are some of the tropes of horror in film?
like filmic techniques.
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
like jump scares.
Jump scares.
The false ones where they build it up and they open the door or they turn the corner and it's like nothing.
It's a cat.
Or like it's a rabbit. Yeah. So there's that. Definitely like people splitting up when they should definitely stay together.
Yeah.
Or what's that creepy
People
door?
alone.
Let's go walk through it.
Yeah.
That kind of trope.
Nighttime.
Sure.
Right? I was recently having a conversation with someone about Ari Aster's Midsommar, which is another movie I quite liked that is almost entirely in daylight.
Oh.
And so that's an interesting...
And it's horror.
Yeah, and it's horror. So yeah, so there's nighttime, and I think tension, just generally tension. You know, if you're not feeling tense watching a horror movie, it's probably not doing its job at all.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the other media I've engaged with horror. What do you think most of the horror I engage with is, Ned? This is an easy question.
Comics.
Correct.
Wow.
Give him a prize.
10 points for me?
Yeah, 10 points for Ned. 10 points for
you.
Ned. And 20 points for me. Because I make the rules. That was a little bit of Dracula.
No one likes this bit. No one likes this bit.
Okay, so I'm going to rattle off some horror comic books for you.
Sure.
Okay?
And they will mean nothing to me, but I'll listen anyway.
Well, I think the first one you should know.
Okay.
The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's a TV show.
TV show. Lock and Key.
Nope.
Okay, so that was also a pretty big TV show. And some of the ones I really like, there's Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion IV and Weather del Eldora. Witches by Scott Snyder and Jock. I love the name of this next one. Philadelphia
Oh, that's good.
by Rodney Barnes and Jason Shawn Alexander. Infidel by Pornsak Pichitsote and Aaron Campbell.
That's Thai.
Yes, he's a Thai American writer.
Cool.
We're gonna read something by him at some point.
Okay.
And there's definitely actually issues of Sandman that count as horror.
Oh,
But I just didn't give that to you because I knew it would freak you out.
okay.
But there are really distinct issues of Sandman which are like, oh, that's making me really uneasy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's another one that I want us to read, and I haven't decided if I'm going to make you read it yet or not, because I genuinely think it will upset you.
And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that to be.
I don't know if because that one I borrowed the trades from the library, and I just like read it in one sitting, and I was just like, oh, for like a few days I was just in this funk because it was just so existential.
Yeah,
and nihilistic.
That's not.
So that's Ice Cream Man by W. Maxwell Prince and Martin Morazzo. I haven't decided if I'm going to make you read it or not.
I'll help you. I'll make the decision for you. Let's not.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Okay.
And so all of these ones that I've mentioned,
Yep.
they deal with there's the immediate horror of it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also an illusion of something very real around us. So, for example, Infidel by Pornsak Pichitsote and Aaron Campbell is about the Muslim American experience.
Right.
And xenophobia and a lot of that made into real horror.
Islamophobia.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what makes horror in comic books so exciting then?
Good question.
You don't know yet.
I mean, I already said
Yeah.
that to me,
Yeah.
what makes horror scary in films is the sound.
Yeah.
So without the sound in comic books, you're just left with visuals.
Yeah. And I'm going to take us all the way back to the beginning, right? What's the thing we talked about with Saga?
I was gonna go like in the beginning.
We're gonna
God created
we're
the
going to
heavens and
go
the earth.
we're gonna go to the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
What's the scariest thing of all?
The serpent.
The serpent when it had 4 little legs.
Okay. Back to the beginning of this podcast, which was Saga episode 1.
Yes.
Is that what you were getting
Yeah.
at? Okay.
The page turn.
Yes.
Because the comic book is a
Right.
tactile experience.
Mhm.
You are turning the pages, right? And here's the thing that I think is really interesting about horror and comic book is that the reader sets their own pace.
Okay.
In the movie, right? In a movie, you are subject to the director and the editor's pace.
And pacing is everything in horror.
And pacing is everything, right? But in the comic book, you get to decide when you're going to turn the page.
But what we learned in the last episode
Yeah.
was that often the way that the pages are drawn can subconsciously affect how fast or slow you read, how long you linger
Yes.
on a particular page. So
Yeah.
perhaps I
So
would
there are tricks
imagine
in there.
that
There are
that comes,
tricks.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there are ways that the writer can influence the reader's pace, but ultimately we have the agency to decide.
Folks, he's getting ahead of me once again.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so there's this sense of, you have to turn the page.
Yeah.
And I think what's really exciting for me about horror and comic books, I'm going to get a little peek of that here, is what happens when you don't want to turn the page.
Then you just stop reading.
Well, but you need to know what's going to happen next, you know? There's that sense. It's the same sense of you're watching a horror movie and your hands are over your eyes, but there's a gap between your fingers.
Right.
Because it's actually almost scarier to not know at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst thing you can ever do is stop a horror movie halfway.
I guess, yeah. I see
when
what
there's no resolution. Because I always think the first half of a horror movie is actually the scariest.
right.
Before the rules are laid out and before everything becomes very clear. Like It Follows is a great horror movie that I think its first half is terrifying. And its second half kind of loses you a little bit. Because you start to get clear on the rules, but it's the unknown that's really frightening.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more unknown than the next page, Dan?
The page after that, maybe?
I guess so. I guess so. Good answer.
Thank you.
Today, that takes us to what we're going to be reading.
Okay.
Gideon Falls.
This sounds so familiar.
Really?
Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking of something else.
You think of Gravity Falls?
I'm thinking of Gravity Falls, the cartoon. Hey, which has very...
Gravity Falls has horror elements.
Yeah,
it's definitely,
very gentle horror elements. Yeah.
So Gideon Falls is by Jeff Lemire.
And there's a Gideon in that cartoon. I'm very sure of it.
I mean, do you want to we could just watch Gravity Falls right now. I love Gravity Falls.
I watched the entire thing during circuit breaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bill, I'm Bill, dude. For people who watch Gravity Falls, that's going to mean something to you.
Okay,
but for those who don't, you will never know. Okay, anyway, Gideon Falls.
If you're enjoying this bit,
send an email to comic-productions@sans.gov.edu.au. So Gideon Falls. Let me say who it's by. I still got Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino, and Dave Stewart.
Okay.
So Jeff Lemire is the writer, Sorrentino is the artist, and Stewart is the colorist.
Okay.
So Lemire is maybe I would say undeniably one of the most prolific modern comic book creators. It's this kind of thing where like you blink and he's got a new graphic novel out and he's won the Eisner for it.
Wow.
He's just got this continuous output that I find really exciting and aspirational. And it's also across a lot of different genres. So he's written Justice League, he's written his own personal stories, he writes these very intimate family dramas. One of my favorites by him is Black Hammer, which is a total like reinvention of the superhero, especially the Golden and Silver Age stories, which is very meta. There's also Descender, which is a really terrific sci-fi story, Ascender, which is a magical story. So he's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And the note about Jeff Lemire is that he's also an artist himself. So I mentioned some of those memoirs. I mean, his first few books was Essex County, which is like a family drama. And then there's also Trillium, and there's Sweet Tooth. So these are all, I think Sweet Tooth, he did the covers. I can't say if he did the interiors, but his art enters all of these things. And he's famous for this sort of scratchy style that's very evocative and nowhere near realism.
Okay.
Right. And so when you're encountering a writer-artist like this, the question is, why are they involving anyone else?
Right.
What is someone else bringing to them that they can't do themselves? Right. And when that person is Andrea Sorrentino, you get it. Gideon Falls is their third collaboration together.
Okay.
So before this, they were doing a lot more mainstream books. They did Green Arrow and they did Old Man Logan.
Is that Wolverine?
That's Wolverine.
But old.
They were revisiting a previous story that someone did of Old Man Logan, but it was they were developing this style together and this vocabulary that I think is culminating in Gideon Falls.
I see.
So here they're operating without any continuity. They're building their own universe. And Sorrentino is perfect for that for two reasons. Okay, so there's one thing that Sorrentino is famous for is this sort of photorealistic style.
As opposed to Lemire's scratchy.
Very expressive.
Okay.
You're going to see it. But Sorrentino's working in a very realistic way, very often using real reference images, using real photographs to build the world.
Okay.
And there's actually one page in Gideon Falls that I'm really excited for you to see. And the other thing, which I think is maybe the more distinctive thing about Sorrentino, is his layouts. He's these images that look really realistic, but then the way he sets up the panels on the page is really inventive. So he works in grids sometimes, but there's moments when you're like, whoa, I did not know you could do that. I did not know you could lay out a 2-page spread in the way you've done it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think we've seen a lot of creative layouts, and you're telling me I'm going to see something brand new this time.
I don't. It's not going to be brand. You're going to be aware that these are tools available.
Right.
But it's just an interesting way. It's just like, oh, wow, I didn't think you'd do it that way.
Okay.
You know? And specifically what that effect is achieving on you for a horror comic, that's going to be new to you.
Right.
Right. So it's the first issue. Nat, you're going to be reading a floppy again.
Woo.
You're going to be reading my copy of Gideon Falls issue 1. Don't fold it into a paper plane.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, you're still going to fold it up. I already know.
Yeah, for sure.
It's part of a longer story. You don't need to know anything about that. Just know that it's a bit of a genre-bending story, but you don't really need to know that within this issue. You just need to know that it's about two narratives that are eventually going to intertwine, but you're not going to see them intertwine.
Okay.
Okay?
So I'm seeing one of the two narratives.
You're seeing both.
Oh, both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Gideon Falls is structured in a pretty experimental way.
I see.
Yeah, most of the issues contain several narratives at once.
I see.
And so when you're going through it, Nat, I want you to think about perspective, paneling, montages, splash images, and really, and I'm hoping this, but I know maybe we'll see if it happens, when you don't want to turn the page. Or when you turn the page and you're like, oh, man. Okay?
What's that? Wait, I'm trying to read the tone of that "oh man." Is that like, "Oh man, this is so good," or "Oh man, I wish I didn't turn the page"?
A little bit more of the second. More of the second where you're like, oh, I did not like that. Okay?
I'm going to be honest before we get into the read. I'm going to be honest. In the spirit of horror and tension and setting up anticipation, I'm pretty skeptical right now.
I honestly think it's not going to work. But I don't want you to think of it in terms of how scared you are. That's not really the goal.
Yeah.
Just like, what's it doing? What's the story doing? What's it doing in a way? What's horror doing in the comic book?
Right.
That we haven't seen before?
I guess I'm skeptical because, it's not a genre that I'm typically drawn to.
Sure.
And also, like, I feel like I'm still not convinced that it'll be able to achieve anything without sound.
That's why I'll be whispering in your ear.
So let's see. We'll see.
And occasionally tapping your shoulder and then going to the other side.
That classic horror trope. Every movie has it. I'm intrigued, to say the least. But let's see whether my skepticism is overturned.
And, without further ado, Nat, here's your floppy of issue 1 of Gideon Falls.
And it's just called Gideon Falls?
And it's just called Gideon Falls.
Okay, if you'd like to read along, where can people find this, Yen?
Well, you can go to your local comic book shop and you can try and get Gideon Falls issue 1. Actually, that's a great question, Nat, because this is by an imprint called Image Comics, which I would say is probably the third biggest publisher of serialized comics in the world after Marvel and DC. It publishes mainly creator-owned comic books. So Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino own the rights to this, which is not the case for Old Man Logan or Green Arrow. And Image is famous for trying to get people in on the ground floor for these comics that have finite ends usually. And so they do reprints of first issues. So I believe at some local comic book shops, you will find a stand, which will have a bunch of issue 1s from across Image titles for $1.
Wow, $1.
$1. Not the price I bought this at. And also, the volume 1 of their trades is also at a discounted price. So you can get the first trade, which is the first, I think, 6 issues of Gideon Falls, for a lower price than you would for volume 2 or volume 3 or any other collection. So that's how you can get in on Gideon Falls.
Great. If you'd like to read along, please pause the episode right here, grab your copy, read it.
And imagine I'm whispering into your ear the whole time.
If you want that experience, you're going to have to go and find Yen personally.
That's the second thing on our Patreon. The first thing on our Patreon is the rap, and the second thing is me whispering. It's opposite of ASMR. It's like unsettling
At this
ASMR.
point, I think we are actively dissuading people from signing up to our hypothetical Patreon.
How about this? If you sign up for the Patreon, we won't send you that.
It's like a threat.
Yeah. Welcome back to a most spooky episode of Comic Sans.
Okay, let's start with that was scarier than I thought. But first, 5 words, right?
No, I want to do something first. I want to say I highly regret us not recording Nat reading that comic book because some of the highlights was him going, "Ooh, I don't like that." And then on another page turn going, "Oh dear. Oh dear." Oh dear. He did it 3 times. Okay, Nat. Same as always, give me 5 words to evoke the feeling of what you read / what it's about.
Sure. Catholicism?
Okay. That's
I didn't know there'd be religion involved.
Yeah.
Catholicism, parallels.
Okay, yeah.
And a link to that, I would say upside down.
Okay, good,
and
good.
That's not a Stranger Things reference.
No,
yeah,
it's not.
But it is quite an important motif that I'm sure we will get to.
Yep.
Red.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah,
okay.
It's pretty hard to miss the red.
You got one more word.
One more word. I will say, and I'll explain this later, my last word is surprised.
Okay, sure.
And that's a personal thing.
Okay.
I'll get to that later.
Okay. And so now, I'm going to give you a little more real estate to describe what you read. Who are the 2 central characters of the first issue of Gideon Falls?
Right. So we're kind of introduced to, firstly, this character named Norton. I
Norton
think.
Sinclair, I believe is his name.
Norton, and we first encounter him looking through trash, or some sort of looking through stuff. He's looking for something. He finds this sort of shard.
Yeah.
And then after that, we kind of cut to the other protagonist, which is Wilfred.
Yes.
Who has been assigned to be...
Father Wilfred.
Oh, sorry. Father Wilfred.
Yes.
Who was assigned to be the new priest in this town.
What's the town's name?
Gideon Falls.
Gideon Falls, correct.
You almost...
You almost panicked.
I was like, town? Gideon Falls. And so he's sort of sent there against his will.
Yeah.
To be the new father, the new priest in this town, which I imagine seems to be quite a small town. And so he arrives, he's kind of shown his home. And then we kind of cut between that and Norton speaking to a psychiatrist, Dr. Shui. I did not pronounce it. Dr. Shi.
No, isn't it she?
She?
Yeah, because it's the she.
I don't know, dude. You and I had like the equal amount of you and I had the equal amount of Chinese experience.
But I think I'm closer to it than you. I think I'm just gonna say that. I'm gonna say that.
So Norton talking to his psychiatrist and she's sort of like, you're not getting better. Why are you so searching to the trash? And he's like, oh, I'm onto something. But he doesn't really tell her. And then we cut back to Father Wilfred in bed. And then, oh my gosh, the oh dear moment. And I'm sure we'll get to it when we turn the page, and there's just this what's the word? This is what I'm looking for. Such a V.
Spectre?
A spectre.
I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Okay, there is a spectre of Father Tom, who was the priest who died and who Pastor Wilbur took over. The spectre of Father Tom, this red sort of silhouette with this white, perched like a golem.
Yeah.
on his bed, and so he's supposed to be dead. And then like he brings Pastor Wilfred out to some field in a barn while Norton begins monologuing about what he's discovered, the evil in this town. The devil is showing him something, and then it all culminates in this barn that Father
manifests.
Father Wilfred stands in front of, and that's issue 1.
Wait. How does it end?
Oh, well, it ends with the barn, right?
Bro, did you miss a page?
Oh,
he missed a page.
No, you know what happened? I didn't miss a page. I just blocked it out of my I've just blocked it out. I just don't want to think about it.
This is gold.
Like in my head.
This is gold.
In my head, this is the last page.
The red image of the barn is the last page.
And then, unfortunately, the actual last page is the lady
who introduced Father...
Yeah, who introduced Father Wilfred to his home and kind of was really nice and motherly, showed him around. She's dead. And there is something... she's stabbed in the chest? Or no, I don't know.
Well, okay. Classic Nat behavior.
What?
Did not notice when she's introduced, Father Wilfred notices she's missing a hand.
Oh, yes. She's a hook for a hand.
She's a hook for a hand. And at the end of the issue, Father Wilfred finds her with that hook through her chest.
Right.
Lying in the field right after he has seen the barn.
Yeah, see, I didn't want to think about this page.
This is everything I could have hoped for and more. This is delightful for me. I can't believe we're doing this like now and not as a Halloween episode. But that means I can save the really spooky stuff for Halloween.
Well, you can also listen to this episode at any time. You could choose to pause right now and just come back in October.
That's true. Okay, let's talk about what's going on in these pages now. Let's talk about Gideon Falls.
A lot to talk about. I mean,
I don't even know where to start. Why don't you tell us where you want to start?
So tell me about this art style.
You see what I'm saying about the photorealism? I'm
seeing what you're saying about the photorealism, but I'm also seeing the scratchy. So is that both of them, or is this just...
It's just Andrea Sorrentino.
Okay. So the scratchiness is not... That's not the Lemire thing you're talking about.
No. The scratchiness of Lemire is very, very different.
Okay. Yeah. But I definitely see the photorealism, especially in the faces.
Yeah. You know what? Now I do know where I want us to start.
Okay.
I want to start on Norton Sinclair's apartment when we first see it.
Okay.
So get to that 2-page spread.
Ah, yes.
Isn't that so uneasy?
Yeah. It looks like a prison cell.
So describe it.
So it's a 2-page spread, and I think what's really interesting here is the perspective.
The perspective is super warped.
It's like fisheye.
It's a fisheye lens.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
And it's kind of like where you take a room and then you flatten it. So, I mean, you kind of see what are supposed to be 2 parallel walls, but they're kind of like...
continuous.
Yeah, they're flattened.
I don't want you to do that again.
Yeah, so I mean, it's gray, it's dire, it's
macabre, it's really depressing.
Yeah, he has a couple books, some magazines,
and I would say it's a little dizzying almost.
Yeah, with the perspective.
The perspective is really like. I remember when I first read it, I was like, "Oh, I can't look at this too long," because I'm getting very confused by what I'm looking at.
And I think that ties in very, very well to the upside down thing, which is another sort of play of perspective.
Yes.
It's a motif that's used throughout the issue. I mean, literally, the first panel, which is a full page spread of Norton with his mask on, just standing there, and he's upside down.
Yeah.
And at first you're like, what? And there was also a moment later, I think Yen heard me say this, when he's praying, and of course he's praying. You know, that classic trope of like the Lord's Prayer.
Looking for salvation.
Yeah. But it took me a while, but in this page, it's split evenly between 4 panels horizontally. So you have the panel splits, but if you look at it, it's actually continuous.
Yeah.
It took me a while because it's him lying in bed with his hands clasped upside down.
Yeah.
And then that comes out a lot stronger, the upside down sort of thing, and the parallels with Pastor Wilfred's reality and narrative being right side up, mirroring the upside down of Norton's reality.
So there's actually something on that page of Norton upside down, right? Yeah. And that last panel is something that I definitely didn't get it on my first read. And I went back and I looked and I was like, what's going on? Oh, that's what's going on. That's kind of freaky, man.
Right. So
actually
on that page is actually 5 panels.
Yeah.
The 5th panel, because it's upside down, the 5th one at the bottom is actually his head.
Yeah.
But what they've done is that they've sort of done this effect of ripping the page.
Yes.
So the page is ripped. You can't see his head. And then what you see instead is this red-black texture that then is the same texture as the next page, which is the title page.
Yes.
But what were you going to say about what it's achieving there?
Well, I think I don't know how effective it is because it is pretty easy to miss.
Yeah.
But I think what I like about it is that it's alluding to that there's something underneath the page.
Right.
Which I think that's really freaky. That's really freaky because so much of this story is about there is something underneath this world.
The evil that is lurking beneath,
that it's going to present itself at inopportune moments for its characters.
And in that blank is the singular word amen.
Yes. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah, and since we're on this and the upside down thing, it's also, the upside down cross is...
Right, the Antichrist.
The Antichrist, right? And so there's... Yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead here, but there was another moment, I guess the more significant moment where the upside down really features.
Is this the alternating upside down?
Yeah. And we're jumping ahead here chronologically, but it's sort of when Pastor Wilfred is awoken by the spectre and then he follows it out into the fields. And so it alternates between Wilfred running in the field and then Norton sitting at his desk and Norton's upside down and it goes Wilfred, Norton, Wilfred, Norton, Wilfred, Norton, Wilfred, and Norton's always upside down.
Yes.
So that's a nice parallel. And then obviously this one,
the
page that I had decided is my last page.
Which is the red barn, the barn revealing itself.
The red barn in the top 3/4 of the 2-page spread.
Yeah.
But then below is an upside down scratched into the table's depiction of a barn in, could be blood, unclear.
It's in red.
Yeah.
Which is a
but it's
spooky
upside down.
color.
So it's the sort of like direct mirroring.
Inversions, yeah.
Yeah. Very, very effective in my opinion.
Just for a little more like literally what's going on with Norton's story is when he's talking to the psychiatrist, he's talking about how he's picking up these scraps of what he thinks is the red barn that he's seen in a vision. But he doesn't actually see the red barn in this issue. The pastor does.
Yeah.
Right. And so in his very depressing apartment, there's all these jars of the different scraps he's found because he's trying to put together the red barn.
Should we talk about red since we're here?
Yes, let's talk about red.
So that was one of my words.
Let's talk about the incredible work by Dave Stewart, the colorist here.
I mean, it's not subtle.
No, it's not.
It's not something that you're going to get in your second, third. It's there. It's front and center.
Yeah.
Maybe more subtle things like the fact that, the coat that he wears to sleep is red, for example. Maybe
but it's a muted red.
Yeah.
It's not that sharp a red.
The first time we see that bright red is...
I believe it's the nail.
Yes, the nail. I mean, that really stood out to me. So there's a scene where, this is again, Norton's talking to the psychiatrist. And so that's kind of what's in the text boxes. He's monologuing to the psychiatrist, but we're seeing these...
The scene is after he's left the psychiatrist.
Yeah, we're seeing these vignettes of him walking out of the mental health hospital. And he's walking and then he walks past this nail on the road, just this nail in the ground in a puddle of water. He walks past it at first and then he turns back. And then when he turns back, the whole panel goes black and white.
Yeah, it inverts the colors, right?
The nail is bright red and then he goes back and picks it up.
And in the text, at the same time, he's talking about how he's trying to stop and how he can walk away, right? What's the text saying?
Well, actually, sorry, I'm wrong. This is actually the doctor saying things. She's saying,
oh, okay.
You can impose meaning on anything if you try hard enough. It doesn't make it real. You're in control. Meditate, calm your mind, quiet your thoughts. So she's trying to give him advice.
Yeah.
While he's like...
We're seeing the opposite of what she wants.
Yeah. He's seeing this red nail in the ground.
But he tries to walk away from it first.
And actually, on the panel with the red nail is him replying, yes, you're right, doctor. I am in control.
Yeah, and then the panel right after that is him going back to get the nail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is he really in control? Hard to say.
Yeah. And then, very closely after that, let's talk about this page turn.
Oh, brother, I love this page turn. This is the one that I was most excited for Nat to see.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the one I remember freaking me out when I was reading it.
So okay, I have a lot to say about this, and I'm not sure how to organize my thoughts. Okay, but let me just start with my experience reading it.
Okay.
Of course I know this is horror.
Yeah.
Right, and then maybe the red nail should have been some sort of hint or should have given me a premonition that something was coming. But I turn the page. It's just a nighttime evening street.
It's Gideon Falls.
It's Gideon Falls. Wilfred's sleeping in bed, shirtless. He's woken up by something. Psst, wake up. Hey, hurry. There's no signal.
It's 4 panels. It's 4 panels. Very quiet. It's the window outside. It's him sleeping. It's closer in on his head. And it's his hand reaching for his glasses.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of that trope we talked about where like you build suspense, turn the corner, it's a cat.
Yeah.
This is like... La 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 la, boom!
And what's on the next page, Nat?
My God, this scared me. I'm sorry, I'm folding your comment.
I can see it. I was never mind.
I mean, we've mentioned this. It's just this full-page spread of this old, creepy man who's perched like a little goblin on his bed, and he's just fully red silhouette, pure angel white eyes. And he's saying, wake up, he'll notice I'm missing.
It's so good, man. Yeah, okay, yeah, you read that. Yeah, you do your best version of that voice, and I'll go.
Okay, are you ready?
Wake up, you'll notice I'm missing.
Okay, my turn.
Okay, your turn.
My turn. Okay, wait, let me think about this. Wake up, you'll notice I'm missing.
Boring.
Mine didn't have an accent. I don't know why yours had an accent.
Didn't you know Gideon Falls is like in Romania? But yeah, it just comes out of the blue, out of the red, if you will.
Whoa. Now we're cooking.
Yeah, what a page turn.
And I think to use the word incorrectly, you kind of accumulate a little trauma from that page turn, right? And so the next page turn, you're a little like, do I want to?
Yeah. And then from then on, you have the alternating upside down thing. And we get to the red barn again. So again, the red is just sort of punctuated throughout as this very overt indicator of evil.
Yes. The occult, of something being amiss, for sure.
Yeah, so it's not subtle.
No, it's not delicate.
The way that they sort of depict the occult, the evils. But it works in a way that, it can almost be like, this is too easy, right?
Right,
Of course you make the evil red.
Yeah.
But
it's I mean, this is going back to coloring, right? The choice of the red. I don't know how they did this, but it's just such a deep red.
Right. It's not like the primary color red that you see in your watercolors.
Yeah.
There's something very bloody about it.
Yeah.
Which I do not like.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. To be clear, that was the barn. And the pastor was, I don't like this.
Yeah. And then, talk about page turns. It's interesting because...
that is something I was hoping you'd bring up.
Okay, let's talk about this. So after the barn spread, you turn the page, and the nature of turning the page means that you see the page on the right before you see the page on the left.
Yes.
And the way that they've laid this out as well, on the left, there's nothing sort of eye-catching.
Yeah.
It's Wilfred doing something. So you will naturally look at the page on the right first, and you will see the body of the woman with her hook through her chest.
Before you see the page.
Before you go back to the left and read. And the way that happens, I guess it's not something you can do in any other medium.
No, you can't. And I think that's...
To go forward and then have to go back to understand the forward... I guess you could flash a frame.
Yeah, but it's not really the same, right?
Yeah.
Like this is again goes back to reader agency with the comic book, which is unlike any other medium.
And something you would not get if you read digitally.
Yes. I would say Gideon Falls kind of doesn't land digitally because you don't get any of the page turns.
Right.
Yeah. You have to be reading it on, say, a tablet or something where you're reading it page by page.
And you'd have the action of flipping.
But the scrolling of it just does not. I don't think scrolling lands for Gideon Falls at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you borrow it, the ebook or whatever, it's almost always flipping. It's very rare that you be scrolling.
This poor lady, man.
Yeah.
What's her name? Mrs. Tremblay.
Yeah, Mrs. Tremblay. Poor Mrs. Tremblay.
I guess she was trembling.
All right. She's already passed, man. You don't need to do this to her. But yeah, that's actually, you pointed out an interesting thing about when I read horror comics. I very often, if I'm really unsettled, I'm like going to the next page. Like I turn the page and I need to see what's at the bottom right panel. And I'm like, okay, now let's go through properly.
Right,
because
right.
you're just so like, oh, I gotta know what's gonna happen, you know?
It's like I can't remember where, I saw someone say that they actively read horror movie summaries before they watch the movie.
Oh yeah, I know plenty of people who do.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people who only read the summaries and don't watch the movies.
Okay, that's just weird. What's the point of that?
Nat, I know so many people who do this. Like I cannot emphasize to you how many people
Just
I know
so
who
they
do
can
this.
participate in the discourse?
Well, it goes back to this. I need to know, but I can't know.
Right. But I guess the argument is if you read the summary first, you know what's going to happen. So when you watch it,
Yeah.
you've lost the anticipation. So just a little tangential thing.
Yeah, but yeah.
So there is one more page that, before we end, that I thought was worth discussing.
Yeah.
It's on, there's no page numbers in this, I
No.
realized. But it's a page after.
Well, actually, hold on, turn it. So we're at the centerfold. It's where the staple is.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you happen to be reading the floppy, you'll know exactly where we are.
Is there any significance to the centerfold in terms of how people lay things out?
I think there is actually some significance in that you know that it's the only pure continuous image.
Okay.
Because you can do a 2-page spread, but there's still the lining of the middle. There's still the shadow of the middle.
Right.
But you see the centerfold, the staple is uninterrupted. The image
Yeah.
continues. I think some creators think of that. Not everyone does, because that's a pretty hard thing to really be staying conscious of throughout the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is mid-conversation with the psychiatrist. And text-wise, he's going on about the things that he's finding and how he's beginning to see some patterns and things like that. And it's just this 2-page spread of I mean, you describe it. I don't even know how to start.
Okay. So Norton collects all of his shards of the barn.
Paraphernalia.
And he takes Polaroids of them and then he dates it. And so we're getting sort of this, I mean, this image is really hard to explain, but it's diagonally descending an array of the Polaroids. But as the Polaroids go closer and closer to the bottom right, they're becoming less and less coherent and becoming overtaken by that same black and red that's haunting the rest of the book. Underneath that is the skyline of the city he's in, because he's not in a small town, he's in a big city. And then behind the Polaroids is Norton sort of rocking in his chair, upset by what he's capturing. I feel like that's basically the 2-page spread here.
I mean, and the key thing is that there's sort of this, again, the full animation
Yes.
sort of him reclining in his chair, like more than 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Leaning, and then kind of coming forward into his head in his hands.
Yeah, so
sort of
distressed by what he's
distressed.
finding. Yeah.
I mean, this, I imagine, was what you're talking about in terms of like a 2-page spread
In a very innovative
laid out
2-page
in a
spread.
way that maybe we've not really seen before.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, and perhaps this may be, my 13 episodes of comic education coming into play here. I did look in this and go, okay, you can only do that in a comic.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. It's a wrap on Comic Sans. We've done it.
Like, you couldn't do
No, you can't. You
this,
simply can't.
like in film,
Yeah.
in anything. Like, it's just the layers of Polaroid, person, cityscape, the transition is
Yeah.
it's just jam-packed with the text.
With
kind of
the text.
Following the same arc of his body.
Oh my goodness. Music to my
Oh
ears.
dear, oh dear,
Oh
oh
dear, oh dear, oh dear. No, well, I mean, it's funny that we look at this image because the last time we talked about Polaroids was the Superman bonus episode
Right.
where the Polaroids were acting as panels in a similar way, but they were so joyful.
Oh, like the best friend
The
one.
best friends,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's all level, and this is just misery. There's a really interesting essay at the issue of this floppy. I don't know if it's at the issue
Yeah,
at the end
the
of it.
secret origins of Gideon Falls.
With Jeff Lemire talking about how this project came about, talking about collaborating with Andrea Sorrentino, and also talking about how Norton Sinclair was a character he started working on maybe 20 years before the publication of this comic.
Wow.
Because Jeff Lemire actually went to film school.
Okay.
And at some point realized, actually, the pipeline to making films is so long. I'm just going to make my own thing and I'm going to make comic books. So I think that's just a really interesting combination. Things like Pastor Wilfred was from initially a different story and then he decided to bring them together. And there's actually a bunch of different ideas that are coming together in the later issues of Gideon Falls that you're not going to see.
Art making, huh?
Art.
It's a lifelong journey.
You know, actually, Nat, if you'll allow me,
I will allow you, I guess.
there was actually a quote from Gillian Tamaki that I wanted to read last episode.
Oh, sure.
And I think I just read it and I was like, this is beautiful. Okay.
And it links, I assume, to art making.
It does.
Okay.
And so Gillian Tamaki was talking about making This One Summer. But I
Right.
think it can extend
Which,
to a lot
you know,
of things.
if anyone is listening to this in isolation, This One Summer was the comic we read in the previous episode.
Yes.
Please go check that out. It's a beautiful comic totally different in mood to this.
Very, 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 very different.
Polar opposites. Comics have range. Who would have thought?
Whoa. Okay, this is the quote from Jillian
Yeah.
Tamaki on making this one summit. Or making art in general. I just want to make a book that I want to read, to be honest. I know that sounds really pie in the sky. And you're not making enough money to do it and put yourself through that much pain. Comics are just so painful to not be doing what you want. I just love that quote, man.
Yeah.
I love that quote. It's just like, it just puts into perspective. Like, if you're making art, make the thing you want to make. And I find myself sometimes, I'm doing something, I'm like, oh, what would someone else think of this? And I'm like, who cares about that person?
Yeah.
I'm the one pouring my time into this and my energy into this. If I'm not happy with it, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That singular quote. Comics are just so painful to not be making
And
what you want
replace
to make.
comic with any art.
With anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. With movies, with prose, with poetry, with music.
Dance.
With dance, with any media, whatever you're working in. The tangible rewards of these things,
Unguaranteed.
unguaranteed,
Often non-existent.
often non-existent. The only thing you can rely on is that you're enjoying making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even though Gideon Falls is really spooky, you can tell they liked making this.
Yeah.
You can tell like there was excitement behind this page and this jump scare and this layout. Just like, ooh, how can we push this? How can we frighten people? You know? And so that takes me to my next question, Nat. Same old question as always. I think I know your answer. Will you keep reading?
This is a complicated question, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll keep reading just because of my aversion to like serialized things. But this has a finite end, right? Gideon Falls?
Gideon Falls is 27 issues.
Okay, so
And it ends.
that is actually more manageable. So I'd say maybe.
Okay.
But what I want to actually say, and it actually pains me to say this because that means that you win somehow.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
but I made a vow to our producers to be honest on this show.
Okay.
You know,
I made no such vow.
I don't play up.
I've never read Gideon Falls.
He knows nothing about comics.
I don't know anything.
I write all the scripts. So what I will say is, as someone
Yep.
who does not do well with horror, annoyingly,
Mm-hmm.
this works for me.
Oh, wonderful.
Because I feel like, and again, I'm guessing because I'm not a horror person, but I feel like I'm getting the emotions you're supposed to get and enjoy when you consume horror.
Yeah.
But at a level that doesn't terrify me because there's no sound. You know what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're saying.
Like, I get the, I don't like that. But it's not in a way that's so uncomfortable and so disquieting that I actually am upset.
Well, I think part of that also, and beyond the sound thing, is also the control you have.
Right. Like, I can turn back.
You can turn back, you can flip around, you can stop. Whereas with a film, you don't have that control. And I think that's what's truly frightening about horror sometimes is the disempowerment of the audience.
You just take it on this ride.
You have no
Yeah.
choice. You know, you're on the roller coaster. You can't get off. With the comic book, you can.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Is that actually going to be worse?
Yeah.
To not know? You know?
That's why my fifth word was surprise, because I was surprised by how much this worked for me.
Uh-huh.
It does make me think that, you know, for someone who is a horror movie buff,
Right.
who loves that thrill of being taken on this ride, would this have the opposite effect on them?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I actually don't know. I actually don't know whether horror movie buffs would love Gideon Falls as much as I do.
Because maybe to them it's like, this is watered down horror.
Yeah, perhaps.
You know,
Yeah.
This doesn't have the same kick as a film with all the shebang.
Yeah, I think it's also part of this willingness to go on the ride.
Yeah.
You know, like I think you can, like the Father Tom or no,
Pastor Tom or whatever.
Pastor
yeah.
Tom, the reveal of his page. For some people, it can be, it's the page.
Yeah.
Right? And you can fight the comic book.
Yeah.
But then my question is, why bother reading it? If you're going to engage with a piece of art, be invited into it, be excited by it. And then if it pushes you out, it pushes you out, right? He went back to the page and he's shaking his head. He hates it.
I hate it.
I'm going
face.
to recreate this photo and send it to Nat at 3 a.m. tonight. You know what? No, I'll just do it in your room. I am looking forward to reading more horror this season, perhaps.
More?
I'm sorry, Nat.
Okay, but
I'm sorry.
I'm not averse to it anymore.
Yeah.
I think if it's going to be like this, if this is the bar,
Yeah.
I'm open.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Listeners can't see the cheeky little grin I have.
I can't wait for my favorite horror comic, Dennis the Menace.
We're not reading Dennis the Menace.
Anyway,
Next question.
the next questions, the all-important questions.
Yes, where the Comic Sans pipeline.
Comic Sans content pipeline. That's what we're officially calling it.
If
The
you
CCP. Wait
Whoa,
a second.
hold on.
Wait.
No. Just add the L at the end.
Or CSCP?
Yeah.
Comic Sans?
Yeah, I just kind of. It's just not really interesting anymore. I like CCP. L.
Okay. If you liked X, you would like Gideon Falls.
Yeah. Nat.
Is it a cop out if I say Gravity Falls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I also don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think that's true at all.
I don't know what to recommend because I don't consume horror.
Oh man. Oh, okay. Well, just remember, you can say a song, you can say music, you can talk about podcasts, you can talk about artwork, you can talk about visual art.
You go first.
Okay, here's my contentious. I think if you like Lost, the TV show.
The TV show that
You
apparently
like-
went south.
Well, let's not get into Lost historicism, okay?
Okay.
That's not what we're here to do, okay? I think if you like Lost, you would like Gideon Falls. And I think if you like the potential of Lost in terms of the mysteries it involves and it invokes, some of which are left unsolved in Lost, perhaps unintentionally, I think Gideon Falls is able to solve those mysteries in exciting ways because Lost definitely also has horror elements to it. So I would say Lost.
What's that movie we watched together? There's 2 parts to this movie. It involves
Fear Street.
Fear Street.
There's 3 parts to it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We watched 2.
No.
Oh, I can't remember what we watched.
No. You only watched the 3rd part, bro. But yeah, okay, Fear Street.
I think that's...
Say more.
Yeah, so I'm so bad at remembering things, but I remember the vibe of Fear Street, which involves sort of going back in time, at least the part that I watched.
Yeah.
Right, going back
Spoilers
in time.
for Fear Street.
I'm sorry. Okay, but I won't say anymore.
That's not really a spoiler because the titles are Fear Street. I think they go
the
back.
decades,
they
right?
say the year that they're
Yeah.
in.
And it involves sort of solving a mystery/murder mystery of this town.
Yeah.
So I think there's some elements of that definitely in the horror tropes and the storytelling of this small town that resonates with this.
I would say
That's
that's
my
pretty good.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next part of the pipeline.
Okay, the pipeline.
Post Gideon Falls.
Yeah.
If you've consumed Gideon Falls and you enjoyed it,
Yeah.
what should people go on to next?
Okay, I would say it's one of the ones I already said,
Okay.
which is Philadelphia.
What a name.
I say Philadelphia because of the metropolis it takes place within.
Right.
Where, a lot of Gideon Falls is this town and this city. And I think Philadelphia has a similar approach to city building, of it taking place in an urban metropolis. And that setting matters. And I also think the art in Philadelphia is pretty experimental, pushes the boundaries in a lot of ways that Andrea Sorrentino does. Additional context, Philadelphia is about vampires.
Ooh.
But it's also...
Like Twilight.
I would say it's a pretty disturbing take on vampires.
Okay.
Yeah, and it just evolves in this kind of unsettling way. So I would say Philadelphia, which is another Image comic.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. If you enjoyed Gideon Falls, check out Philadelphia.
Which is just such a good name,
Now, is this
man.
spelled with 1 L or 2 L's?
I think 2.
Okay.
If I came up with that name, I would just figure something that would fit into that.
You think they came up with the title first and the concept
I'm
after?
just saying, if we were making...
Comic Sans Francisco.
Yeah, see? We should just... I don't know what we'd do.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll
figure it out.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Just thanks in general.
Thanks for
for being here. If you've been here since season 1, all 3 of you, thank you. Thank you for listening this far. Thank you for coming with us in this journey.
We hope you enjoy your stay in Gideon Falls. I had to get one more.
Oh, sure.
My stupid little voice.
I'll give that to you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you on the next page.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andas Productions podcast hosted by Yant and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Roshan Singh Sambhi and Scott Lee Chua. Our cover art is by Isabel Fang. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and rate Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.